"You're Alan, right? Your wife's been seeing my husband." That was the first thing she said. No hello, no polite smile, just that. She slid into the booth across from me like she belonged there, like we'd done this before. Her tone was smooth, practiced, not cruel, just sure. Her eyes didn't blink. They didn't need to. I looked at her, then at the seat where my wife used to sit, on quieter nights, when Erin still ordered that ridiculous lavender cocktail and complained about her boss's voice. She hadn't been here in weeks, not since the new team retreats started popping up on the calendar. This place still smelled like citrus peel and old wood varnish, but the table felt colder tonight. "I figured you should know," the woman added, her voice lowering just enough to slip under the music. "I have screenshots." She didn't ask if I knew. She told me because she knew I did. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. I didn't say anything, just sat there with my hands folded on the table, trying to remember if I'd worn this exact shirt the last time Erin and I were here together. The woman across from me, tall, poised, maybe a few years younger than me, waited without fidgeting. Her nails were short, painted a clean gray. Her bag was the kind you don't leave on the floor. "I'm Ava," she said after a moment. "My husband is Brandon Kay. I'm guessing you've heard the name." I had. He was the colleague Erin mentioned once offhandedly when she forgot I remember names. Her tone had shifted that day, just slightly, when she said his. I tucked it away at the time, one of those little slips you don't think matters until later. "Your wife's good at patterns," Ava continued. "She likes familiar places, same hotel, same rooms, same playlists. She used it with Brandon too." Her eyes flicked toward the speaker overhead, as if the jazz track confirmed her point. I kept my face still. I'd spent years listening to negotiations fold on themselves in silence. This was no different. "I'm not here to blow anything up," she said, "but I'm not pretending I don't see it either." She slid her phone across the table. I glanced at the screen. A text thread. Erin's name lit up at the top. Messages. Photos. One from the hallway of a hotel I recognized. Erin in a black coat I'd bought her last winter. Brandon in a gray shirt I'd seen in our laundry weeks ago. Ava didn't speak while I looked. She just sipped her drink. Clear, probably gin, no garnish, and waited. "Why now?" I finally asked. She tilted her head slightly. "Because I was tired of pretending I didn't see it, and I figured you deserved the choice to stop pretending too." There was no venom in her voice, just the kind of honesty that cuts sharper because it's calm. I looked at her again, really looked, and saw someone who had already burned through the anger phase and come out clean on the other side. The waiter approached to clear my plate and paused when he saw her. "Another round?" he asked. "For both of us," she said. Then to me, "If you want to talk, I'll stay. If not, I'll leave. But either way, you don't need to eat alone again." I didn't answer right away. The booth felt different now. Not heavier, not lighter, just real. I nodded. Stay." She smiled, not a grin, not flirtation, just a quiet confirmation. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "Take this when you're ready," she said, sliding it next to my glass. "You'll know what to do." I didn't open it. Not yet. I didn't need to. Because somewhere deep down, I already knew. She stirred her drink with slow, absent-minded circles, the ice clinking against the glass like a metronome measuring the last few seconds of who I used to be. "She's been sloppy," Ava said, eyes fixed on the liquid. "Same hotel, same lies." I didn't ask how she knew. The envelope still sat unopened beside me, its presence heavier than anything she could say out loud. But her voice made it real in a way the screenshots didn't. It stripped Erin of her practiced excuses, her light deflections, her fake tired smiles when she got home from one of those team retreats. All of it sounded ridiculous now, infantile. "She even used my name once," Ava continued, not looking up. "Told the front desk she was me. Probably didn't think anyone would notice, but someone always does." I exhaled through my nose. Not a sigh, just a slow adjustment to new altitude. The oxygen was thinner in this kind of clarity, and clearer too. She finally met my eyes. I'm divorcing Brandon. I already filed. There was no apology in her tone, no suggestion that we were supposed to become allies. I'm not here for drama. I don't want to dissect your marriage. I just figured you should know what you're standing in. Before you keep standing there. She paused for a moment, watching me. And maybe, just maybe, you deserve better too. There was no flirtation, not even a flicker. She said it like she was reading a line from a report, offering a result I hadn't known I'd requested. Then she leaned in, her voice low enough that only I could hear. So forget her. How about dinner with me next time? The words hung in the space between us, neither heavy nor light, just inevitable. She wasn't teasing. She wasn't rescuing me. She was giving me something rarer. Choice. I didn't hesitate. Yes. Not because I was trying to prove anything. Not because I needed comfort. And not because of some pitiful reflex to bounce from one broken place to another. Just clarity. It was the most honest yes I'd said in years. She nodded once, no smile, no shift in posture, as if she'd been expecting the answer, not hoping for it. Then she finished the last inch of her drink, set the glass down gently, and reached for her coat. You've got the envelope, she said as she stood. Take your time, but don't take too long. She walked out without looking back. I sat there for another minute, maybe two. The envelope hadn't moved, but it felt warmer now, like it had started burning through the varnish of the table. I didn't reach for it, not yet. My hands stayed still, folded in my lap. I looked around the restaurant, same place where I'd celebrated our 3rd anniversary, where Erin cried once over work, where she told me she loved how this place made her feel like we still had magic. And I realized the magic had left the moment she did, only I'd been slow to notice. The waiter returned. Will your guest be coming back? He asked, gesturing to her seat. No, I said, standing up slowly, but she'll be here next time. I took the envelope, tucked it into my coat, and left without checking the time, because the clock had already started ticking the moment she slid into that seat, and I wasn't going to waste another second pretending I hadn't heard it. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. The apartment was too quiet in that artificial way that only happens after someone's lied in it too long. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what I'd do with the truth. I sat at the kitchen counter with the lights low, Erin's old texts lit up on my screen, the ones I used to trust without hesitation. Late client dinner, don't wait up. Spa night with the girls finally. Hotel's amazing. Needed this reset. Each one was neat, light, casual. Like she'd learned to write them for efficiency, not warmth. And they'd all come through at the same time. She was seen checking into hotels with Brandon. I opened my laptop and pulled up our joint calendar. Erin was always obsessive about syncing our schedules, especially before these trips. There it was, 3 weekends over the last 2 months marked innocently. Team wellness, client offsite, quarterly reconnection, except the locations matched the charges Ava had mentioned. I still had one contact I hadn't burned, Mason. We'd gone through the academy together. He stuck with private security and now worked corporate hotels in Midtown. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but some debts hold longer than time. I texted, quick favor, can you check a room booking? Same last name as a guy named Brandon K. Checked in under Warren Corp card, dates incoming. He called instead of replying. You good? He asked, no small talk. I just need confirmation, that's it. Mason was silent for a beat. Send me the dates. I'll keep it quiet. 15 minutes later, he wrote back, confirmed, same guest room 3 times, same companion, guest book shows, Brandon K. I stared at the message, letting it settle into the soft tissue behind my ribs where denial used to live. Brandon K., her colleague, the one who supposedly had a fiancé, the one she said was a little arrogant, but harmless, the one she mentioned once with a half smile when I asked who was on her team. The same last name Ava gave me without blinking. I looked at Erin's last text again, sent just 2 nights ago. Miss you. This place has awful coffee, LL. Except she hadn't missed me. She'd shared a bed with another man while sending me that, thinking emoji and fake humor would disguise the vacancy. I finally opened the envelope Ava had left. Inside were 4 photos. all discreet, all time-stamped. Erin's shoulder, her profile, her hand brushing against Brandon's chest as they entered the lobby. Brandon's face turned toward her, mouth mid-laugh, her eyes looking up at him, not cautious, not hidden, just open. One receipt showed 2 wine tastings billed to her company card. Another showed a robe purchased from the spa gift shop, size L, a men's. It wasn't that she lied. It was how easily it made sense once I stopped needing to believe her. I sat there until dawn, the photos spread across the counter, her texts still glowing on my screen like tiny embers that couldn't burn hot enough to hide what they were built on. There were no more guesses. No more wondering if I was imagining things or reading too much into her sudden changes. Her clipped good nights, her new obsession with yoga retreats, the way she laughed differently when her phone lit up. It wasn't emotional anymore. It was verifiable. And now that it was documented, I could stop holding space for explanations she never intended to give. I stood, folded the envelope back together, and slid it into the top drawer where we kept the warranty papers and insurance forms, the things we never wanted to need, but always knew might come in handy. Then I turned off my phone, because I didn't need to ask her. I already had the answer. And from this moment forward, I wasn't chasing questions. I was building something colder, smarter, and permanent. Erin always made a show of how open we were. Monthly sit-downs at the dining table with glasses of wine and her tablet open, budget spreadsheets color-coded like a school project. Transparency keeps us honest, she'd say, flipping between tabs, waiting for praise. I let her talk. I nodded at the graphs, but she never asked the right questions, never noticed what was missing, what was quiet. The deed to the house had never left my name. Even when we refinanced, I made sure the paperwork looped through my cousin's firm. Erin signed without reading the fine print, trusting I'd already handled it, because I always had. And when she wanted to set up emergency savings, I agreed. I even helped her pick the online bank, but I never told her about the second account, the one backed by a trust I established years ago after a close friend's divorce gutted him clean. Erin thought she knew everything. She didn't even know where the physical key to the safe was. That week, after the photos, after the time-stamped receipts, and Ava's envelope that felt heavier every time I touched it, I didn't rage, I didn't confront, I didn't even change my tone. I logged into our shared savings portal and took one long, deliberate look at the total. Then I initiated the transfer, not all at once. I wasn't reckless. I moved it in structured batches, amounts low enough to avoid alerts, spaced across 3 days. By Thursday, the primary savings account was empty. In its place, a simple notice: 0 balance, no recent activity. The funds now sat in a layered structure of holdings, buried beneath a personal trust, attached to a postnuptial clause she'd laughed off when I suggested it 3 years ago. "You're too cautious," she'd said, tapping my hand. "It's not like I'm going anywhere." No passwords were changed. No access was revoked. From her perspective, everything still looked the same. But if she tried to withdraw more than a few hundred, if she tried to shift funds for one of her spiritual getaways or book another quiet weekend with Brandon, declined. I checked the notification logs. She hadn't logged in at all that week. Probably assumed the account still sat untouched, waiting to fund her next fiction. The house, ours legally, emotionally, practically, was always in my name. She called it our sanctuary. That's what she told her friends. She took credit for the patio redesign, the curtains, the lighting, but not the mortgage, not the insurance, not the equity tied up in a shell LLC that on paper had nothing to do with her. I sat in my office that night, slow jazz playing low, the soft rustle of pages as I reviewed documents I'd last touched in 2020. I didn't smile. There was no pleasure in the prep, just necessity, a quiet hardening. I thought about Ava, her calm, the way she said, "I filed," like she'd just finished a load of laundry. Efficient, done. I wasn't there yet, but I was moving. My pieces were locking into place, not as revenge, as insurance. Erin wouldn't notice right away. Not that week, maybe not the next. She'd feel the shift eventually, when the convenience cracked, when her card got declined at checkout, when the app wouldn't let her push the transaction through, when the emergency money she'd assumed was hers turned out to be inaccessible. She'd panic, blame the bank, call me, maybe even accuse me of hiding something. I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just say everything's still transparent because it was. She just never bothered to read what the light was shining on. The next Saturday, I arrived 10 minutes early. I don't usually do that. But something about this wasn't usual. Not a date, not revenge, not therapy. Something else. I wore a navy button-down, same one Aaron once said brought out the gray in my eyes. Ava was already seated when I arrived. Black dress, no embellishment, tailored, the kind of look that says, I don't have time to waste dressing for attention. Her hair was pulled back. No jewelry, just a slim watch. She didn't stand when I reached the table, just offered a quiet nod and gestured to the open seat, like this was exactly where we were meant to meet. We ordered wine. Pinot Noir for her, a rye old-fashioned for me. Then silence. Not awkward, just unhurried. She studied the menu like she'd memorized it, then folded it shut without ordering. We'll split the steak, she told the waiter when he returned. Medium rare, charred edges. That still work for you? I nodded. Perfect. We didn't talk about Aaron or Brandon at first. Instead, it was airports, how she once got stuck in Nashville for 10 hours and ended up playing cards with a retired truck driver and a nun. We talked about how hotel coffee is always bad unless you pay extra, and how silence in a house can start to sound different after betrayal. I told her how I'd started sleeping in the guest room, not because of a fight, but because I didn't want to share air with someone pretending everything was fine. We laughed once, softly, the kind of laugh that comes after everything breaks and the only thing left is clarity. Then she reached down, unzipped a side pocket in her bag, and placed a plain black folder on the table between us. She didn't push it toward me, just let it sit there like a final course waiting to be served. Take your time, she said. It's yours now. I opened it slowly. Inside, photos, printed in matte. Some were grainy, surveillance style, but clear enough. Aaron leaning into Brandon in a parking garage. A blurry image of their hands brushing in an elevator mirror. A receipt from a downtown boutique. 2 fragrances purchased, his and hers. Next, hotel records, credit card charges, itemized. Spa sessions booked in pairs. Dinner for 2. Same time Aaron told me she was grabbing drinks with the girls. She'd even signed her own name on one receipt. Careless. Timestamp circled in red. Each one matched a night she'd given me an excuse, told me she was exhausted, asked me not to wait up. At the back, one final page, handwritten, clean script, black ink. You deserve the full truth. I didn't speak. I just looked up at her and held her gaze. She didn't look smug. She looked done, like someone who had already burned the rope and walked away from the well. This isn't for leverage, she said. You don't owe me anything, but I figured if you were anything like me, you'd want the whole picture before making your move. I closed the folder gently, pressed my palm flat against it for a moment, like sealing something in place. I appreciate it, I said, and meant it. She nodded once, took a sip of wine. She underestimated you, didn't she? They always do when you're quiet. We didn't toast, didn't clink glasses. There was no movie scene flair to it, but when the steak came, we split it evenly. No arguments, no bargaining, just 2 people who'd been handed the same wound and decided not to bleed in circles. The folder stayed beside me all night. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. Truth only has to be seen once. Then it never leaves your sight. The lobby was glass and eucalyptus, cool, curated wellness in every corner. Aaron had picked this resort 2 months ago, carefully timed between 2 fabricated client engagements. A self-care reset, she called it, when she forwarded me the itinerary, smiling from the hallway like she was sharing a gift. She even dropped Brandon's name once, casually, as someone who recommended the spa for mental clarity. That Friday, she arrived late in the afternoon, sunglasses still on, phone in one hand, tote bag with 3 different serums in the other. She wasn't tired. She was glowing, expectant, like the weekend had already begun exactly the way she planned it. She stepped up to the reception desk and smiled. Aaron Warren, checking in. The woman behind the desk returned the smile, tapping the keyboard gently like a pianist. Of course, I see your reservation here. 2 nights, Ocean View Spa Suite. Then she tilted her head. I'll just need a card to finalize. Aaron slid hers across the counter. Her usual card, the one tied to the shared account. The machine beeped once, then read. The receptionist tried again. Sometimes it's the chip reader. Second beep, another red flash. Erin's lips pressed into a line. Let me try a different one. She handed over her backup, the personal card she used for flights and gifts and dinners Brandon never paid for. Beep, denied. The receptionist looked up. Do you have another card under Mr. Warren's name? Erin stiffened. Her fingers tapped the counter, then stopped. No, I'm here alone. The receptionist blinked, polite but confused. Oh, it's just that card was used for the original booking. Erin's silence stretched too long. In the corner of the lobby, a couple laughed quietly. A fountain burbled behind a glass divider. Soft instrumental music played from unseen speakers. The resort didn't feel luxurious anymore. It felt like an exhibit she didn't belong in. I'd like to use a different payment method, she said, voice clipped. Manually? Of course, the receptionist said smoothly, tapping again. But I'm afraid the original reservation has a hold on your previous card. Would you like me to release it? Erin's jaw flexed. Just cancel the booking. I'll sort it out later. But she didn't walk away right away. She stood there, phone in hand, like she expected someone to appear and fix it. Someone to rescue her from the sudden vacuum of not being in control. No one did. She walked outside, heels clicking on the tile louder than she probably meant, and stood at the edge of the valet circle, staring down at her phone. She refreshed the banking app. Nothing changed. She tried the second card. The same. Inside the system, a small redirect had already rerouted the shared funds days ago. Silent, legal, reversible, only with a signature she didn't have access to anymore. She called the bank's helpline. She didn't yell. Erin never yelled in public. But her voice had the tight, manufactured tone. Syrupy, controlled. It cracked once. She hung up before they could transfer her again. She sat on a bench outside the spa entrance, scrolling through her texts. Brandon hadn't replied to her last message. She sent another. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No response. For the first time in a long time, Erin was exactly where she said she'd be. Alone. Only now, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exposure. Like the curtain had pulled back and the set was already being dismantled. She booked a rideshare back to the city. 43 minutes. She waited in silence. Not because she wanted to, but because she had nothing left to explain, and no one left to explain it to. Ava called just past noon on a Thursday. I was between meetings, sipping burnt office coffee, and watching the parking lot through my window when her name lit up my phone. You should see this, she said. No hello, no build-up, just that. She sent a file, PDF format, organized like a case brief. I opened it while she stayed on the line. Quiet. Inside dates, names, receipts. Same resort Brandon took Erin to in January. He'd also booked it in September with a different coworker. Another name matched a conference from last spring. This time, it wasn't Erin. It was a woman from marketing 5 years younger, now taking time off for personal reasons. This isn't just one affair, she said flatly. It's his system. It didn't surprise me. What hit me wasn't the scope. It was the precision. Brandon had played the same hand with Ava as he had with Erin. He'd found women who already worked overtime, already felt ignored, already knew how to lie to themselves. And then he'd made it easy. I scrolled through the report. Ava hadn't just done homework, she'd built a case, dated payments, images of him entering hotels with different women, receipts from private dining rooms, even a voice message from one woman who'd realized the overlap too late. You built this fast, I said. She didn't answer for a second. Then, I've had it ready for months. I just didn't want to look at it until I had a reason. Now she had one. She cleared her throat. He's trying to keep the lake house. His lawyer's claiming it's his separate property, sentimental value, or some garbage. But what Brandon forgot is, the land under it, it's mine, came from my family. My name's on the deed. He can keep the shell. That made me laugh. Not bitter, sharp, clean. You know, I said, leaning back, I own the house Erin's been living in. Ava paused, then smiled through the phone. I could hear it in her breath. "Look at that," she said. "We're aligned in more ways than one." She wasn't gloating. Neither of us were. This wasn't about retribution anymore. It was logistics. When someone builds a story on convenience and performance, they forget that contracts don't lie, deeds don't blink, records don't forgive. "He's still trying to look innocent," she added, "still sending morning texts, pretending nothing's changed. I think he believes I'm stalling because I still care." "Same," I said. "She's been extra warm lately, leaving notes, baking even. She made lemon bread yesterday." Ava scoffed. "Brandon picked up flowers on Tuesday. Dahlias, the kind I hate." We were both silent for a moment. Then she said, "I'll send over the file. If you ever want to compare legal angles, my attorney's good." I didn't need to ask if she trusted her attorney. I knew she'd already vetted every clause, just like I had. Just like we'd both started doing the moment we realized this wasn't personal betrayal. It was structured fraud wrapped in romance. We hung up without saying goodbye. It didn't feel necessary. Later that night, I sat on the back deck with a copy of our marriage agreement. Aaron had signed it before we bought the house, back when I still believed protecting yourself meant doubting your partner. I remembered how she teased me about it. "You're treating this like a business deal." She'd laughed, wrapping her arms around me. "This isn't a contract. It's love." She'd signed anyway. Clause 14C. In the event of infidelity, spousal claims to property under sole title were waived without penalty. It was clear, quiet, legally binding, and she'd signed it without reading. Ava was right. Brandon could keep the house. It just wouldn't stand for long. And Aaron? She'd been so focused on sneaking around in borrowed hotel rooms, she never realized she'd been living in a house that didn't belong to her anymore. Not emotionally, not legally, not at all. She wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday. That was the plan. Her wellness escape, with vague mentions of workshops, reflection, detox. But Saturday afternoon, I heard the door unlock. Keys dropped into the bowl. Soft footsteps crossed the entry rug like nothing had changed. "Hey," Aaron called out, voice light, like we were just picking up after a normal week. "You're home early too?" I was standing at the stove, letting the sauce reduce without rushing. The air smelled like rosemary and butter. A low jazz track hummed in the background. Every detail was intentional, composed. She walked into the kitchen like she hadn't just been caught by the boundary lines of a system she never saw being drawn. I turned slightly. Figured I'd cook. She leaned against the counter, scanning the space for clues. I watched her eyes move. Pantry door, wine rack, my face. "How was your week?" she asked, casual, but I saw it. The edge behind her smile. It was tight, measured. "Enlightening," I said, without looking at her. Her fingers drummed once on the counter, then stopped. She opened the drawer, pulled out the wine opener like it was routine, as if nothing lived under the surface of her gesture, as if the card declines, the unanswered text, the hotel desk questions weren't already crawling under her skin. I plated the food, pan-seared halibut, lemon risotto, roasted fennel. She always said I cooked better when I was processing something. She just never imagined she'd be the subject of the recipe. We sat. She poured the wine, a little too generously. The bottle clinked softly against the glass rim. I didn't say a word. Halfway through her first bite, her phone buzzed, face down on the table, but not on silent. A sharp vibration against the wood. She didn't move at first. Then slowly she flipped it over. Screen lit. Brandon. No message, just the name. That was enough. I watched her eyes freeze just for a second, that pause where guilt meets exposure and doesn't know which way to run. She glanced up at me. I didn't blink, didn't ask. Her voice came soft, forced. "Is something wrong?" I took another bite, chewed slowly, wiped the corner of my mouth with the cloth napkin. Then I smiled. "Depends what you define as wrong." She held the glass without drinking, her knuckles white around the stem. The jazz track shifted. Minor key now. She didn't notice. "I'm just tired," she said finally. "The trip was intense. Workshops, emotional stuff. Sounds transformative." Her shoulders stiffened. "Yeah, something like that." I let the silence stretch, uncoiling like steam from the plate between us. I wanted her to feel it, not fury, not accusation, just the quiet erosion of control, the invisible architecture of her lies giving way under her own weight. She didn't touch her food after that. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't flip it this time, just reached out and dragged it across the table, slow, like it was hot. We finished the meal in silence. She offered to do the dishes. I let her. In the hallway, I heard her phone ring again, short, insistent, then stopped. She didn't answer it, because for the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't know what version of herself she needed to be, and that terrified her more than anything. The package arrived on a Tuesday, mid-morning. She'd just returned from yoga, Matt still unrolled in the hallway, citrus-scented water bottle sweating on the console table. She noticed the envelope because it wasn't like the others. No branding, no plastic window, no junk offer tucked inside. Just her name, clean serif font, a courier label stamped discreetly in the corner. She tore it open with one hand while texting with the other. Probably Brandon. Probably trying to coordinate another weekend, another excuse. She didn't see the first page until the phone slipped slightly from her grip. Petition for marital dissolution. The title was centered, calm, as if written by someone who'd already made peace with every outcome. She sat down on the edge of the armrest, the papers fanned in her lap like a slow bleed. There were no accusations inside, no emotional appeals, just facts, legal structure, clause references, asset divisions so clean they felt surgical. Page 3, the arbitration clause already signed by me. Page 5, a formal waiver of alimony, irrevocable. Page 7, declaration of property retention under Section 14C. In the event of proven infidelity, the non-violating party retains sole ownership of titled property, assets, and trusts established prior to the incident. She flipped back, scanned for loopholes. Anything gray? Anything flexible? There wasn't any, because Erin hadn't read the original agreement carefully when she signed it years ago. She'd skimmed while sipping wine, barefoot on the porch, laughing about how formal it all sounded. She trusted that nothing could go wrong, that love meant immunity, that fine print was for other people. She had initialed every page. There was a signature block at the end. Her handwriting, clear as day, no duress, no conditions. The phone buzzed again. She didn't look this time. Instead, she found the line on the filing summary that made her chest hollow out. Filing date, March 12th. She blinked. That was 2 days after the dinner with Ava. 2 days after I said yes. 2 days after she poured wine at our table, phone face down, pretending not to be caught. That was when it had started, while she still thought she had control, while she thought I was in the dark, cooking risotto, and waiting for her to come home with peace-offering smiles. A clean severance, no fight, no scene, just a man who had already moved all the pieces while she was still rehearsing her next excuse. She gathered the pages like they might reshape themselves into something less final. They didn't. The last line of the document read, "All prior agreements acknowledged and upheld, no revisions permitted without mutual written consent." She wasn't going to get that. She sat back against the couch, papers pressed to her chest like proximity might soften the truth. But this was the truth. It was already over. Not today. Not with the envelope. 3 weeks ago. She just hadn't noticed the silence growing between us wasn't passive. It was structural, and it had been engineered to last. Same restaurant, same booth, only this time I was already seated, facing the door. The light was softer than I remembered, or maybe I was different now, less raw, more tuned to what mattered. The table still bore faint scratches from old conversations, the wood dark and familiar. I kept one hand on the glass of water, not from nerves, but because I liked the steadiness of the temperature against my skin. She walked in exactly on time, not rushed, not dramatic. Ava, same black coat draped over her arm, hair down this time, eyes calm. She scanned the room once, spotted me, and smiled. Not wide, not performative, just the kind of smile people wear when they've already let the past finish its sentence. She slid into the booth beside me, not across from me, like we weren't on opposite sides anymore, like the battle had ended, and what remained was aligned. "Hey," she said softly, setting her clutch on the seat. "You look settled." "I am." The server came and went. We ordered quickly. No need for menus this time. We'd been here before, not just the place, but the moment, and it didn't need explanation. We didn't talk about Brandon or Aaron. They were no longer central characters in our story, just names filed away in closed folders, still existing somewhere, but with no more weight in our decisions. Just dust on a shelf we'd already left behind. When the drinks arrived, her Pinot again, my rye neat this time, she raised her glass first. To clarity, she said. I turned toward her, mirrored the gesture, and let the silence stretch a second longer before answering. Best decision I ever made. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long while, I felt no resistance in my chest, no tightness, just that rare kind of stillness you don't recognize until you've lived through noise. She rested her chin on her hand and looked at me, not searching, not evaluating, just present. Do you regret any of it? She asked quietly. Not what they did, but what came after. I thought about the documents, the silence, the nights alone that didn't feel lonely, the look on Erin's face when she realized it was already done, the way she kept reaching for handles I'd already removed. No, I said, because it stopped being about regret a long time ago. It's about distance now and what's worth crossing for. Ava nodded. Good. We didn't need to talk about what came next, whether this was going to be more than two people who happened to survive the same storm, whether we'd see each other again next week or next month. That wasn't the point. The point was, we weren't pretending, and we weren't broken. She laughed once, soft and genuine, when the waiter brought dessert without us asking. Did you plan that? No, I said, but I'll take it. She leaned slightly against my shoulder, not possessively, not as a claim, just familiarity. I watched the street outside as people passed, busy, loud, rushing, and I didn't miss the chaos at all. Erin had taken the performance, the excuses, the carefully staged versions of herself that kept unraveling the second no one was watching. Ava brought none of that, just her name, her truth, her presence, same booth, new story, one I didn't have to rewrite, defend, or regret. I finished my drink and sat back, watching the candle flicker low between us, and for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I'd lost anything. I'd simply stopped carrying what was never mine.